Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Paul Mackay from Analogue Wonderland, and today I am going to be talking to you all about the fun and joy of half frame 35mm. It's a big topic at the moment and we'll get into why that is. Stick around if you want to learn about shooting half frame. Whether you are new to film photography or a long-time analog enthusiast, our channel covers all things film, from tips and tricks, film reviews to how-to videos. Subscribe now and keep those notifications turned on so that you never miss a beat. Happy shooting! So first of all, what is half frame photography? It is half of a full frame. Specifically, or generally speaking, it's half frame of a 35mm format. The easiest thing to do is to show you normal roll of 35mm. You can see there sort of the images being that kind of width each time. This is half frame. So you can see, obviously it's black and white, you can see each frame, there's two of them, two images within the normal 35mm frame. There we go, done, video finished. That is the very basics, but of course it means something quite important for both how you take photos and also the cost and logistics of it. But first of all, why is this such a big topic? Well, I think there's two things that's happening. One is that our friends over at Pentax have revealed that their upcoming brand new film camera, which is to be released soon, is going to be half frame. That's definitely something that's got a lot of people's interest. But even apart from that, there's been quite a few cameras, and I've got a couple here actually. This is the Ektar H35N, the Kodak Ektar H35 came before. Cameras are available today that shoot half frame, and the driving force I think behind a lot of people experimenting with them is twofold. The unique orientation and the creativity that half frame can unlock, and secondly, the cost. We'll cover the cost first because I think it's relatively straightforward. You're shooting twice as many images on the same roll of film. Now, that means the film is the same price. The development and scanning, I mean, different labs vary, but for example, we don't charge any extra for half frame scans versus anything else. So you're literally getting twice the number of images from the same cost of film, the same postage into the lab, the same development, processing and scanning costs. Simply, you're buying a roll of film for, let's say, £15, let's say £15 again for processing, £30 for 36 images, you're now getting £30 for 72 images. They are slightly smaller, so the scans will come back slightly smaller. If you upgrade your scanning options, so maybe you get the premium versus the standard scans from your lab, that might be a couple of pounds extra, but that's more than offset by the fact you're getting double the images. So your resolution still coming through, it's still very, very strong and at a much more affordable price. Personally, whenever I shoot half frame, I actually tend to shoot 24 roll film rather than 36, because the odds of me remembering that which film I've got loaded and having the patience to finish 72 photos of film is pretty unlikely. So I prefer to do 24 exposure 35mm, which still gives me 48 photos, which is more than the 36 on a full frame. So that's sort of the cost element, and obviously with everything that's been going on in the last couple of years in film and outside of film with costs going up, that's a real help and allows people to continue shooting film as a really affordable hobby. The second thing is the creativity. Now, confession, I only started shooting half frame in the last year or so. So a lot of you will have been shooting half frame for ages, so you're probably more expert than me, but I think one of the observations I've had as I've moved to shooting half frame is how the orientation and the smaller size has changed the photos I take. And actually, I remember this when I first shot medium format. Used to shooting on 35mm, looking for things that are a landscape. You're looking for photos that do that. Of course, you can turn it, but quite early on, someone gave me the advice of simplify, simplify, simplify. So try and remove as much choice as you can. What's happened is that after years of shooting 35mm, I very rarely ever turn the camera around and use portrait. I'm always looking for landscape. Where there are moments where you'd be looking to capture a bustling street scene or something where lots is going on and you're trying to capture interactions between lots of different subjects in school. That's going to be really hard on half frame, like it is on 110. You might need a bit more space. But because the viewfinder is often smaller to help you with that, you will find you're unlikely to be trying to fit too much in. That's one thing. The second thing is the fact that many of these cameras, not all of them, many of them are portrait orientation. So sprockets are putting it through, and to fit two on, the camera is shooting portrait. And unless you have a camera that loads horizontally, or it does something different optically within a camera, you're going to be shooting, as each one goes through, on a portrait orientation. Two things. One, that portrait orientation isn't the same as turning a 35mm on its side, because it's not, simply speaking, the ratios change. It is thin, it feels thin, it looks thin when you see the photos come through, sort of tall and thin. And obviously that portrait orientation really changes what you can take photos of. When I've started doing this, it's incredible how quickly I think I found my brain switching to that mode and seeing photos that I just wouldn't have seen before. The way I take portraits is different. I've got used to shooting portraits landscape, so always paying attention to what's around the context of a person, whereas this allows me to shoot the person, sort of head and torso, or something above them. But also like still lifes or street things, whereas before I'm looking for, you know, maybe cars that are more like that, or shop fronts or things, you know, rows of hedges. I'm now looking for lampposts or bollards or individual doorways, all these things that go up. Now a lot of you, again, I know will be sat there being like, Paul, you can turn your camera around. And honestly, that's what I thought when I first did it. I thought, I mean, great, it's orientation like that, but I can just walk around pretending the camera's this way up, no change. I know for me, and I know for a lot of people, that's just not how our bodies and brains work. You give me a camera and I hold it like this, it's comfortable like this. Most half-frame cameras are designed to be held like this. And even though that is a really simple movement, you will find yourself shooting a lot of portrait. The second thing that makes it really interesting is the fact that if you do choose to scan, and again, you can just ask our lab or your lab for this, you can still scan half frame with a full frame mask. What that means is that, I won't put my gloves on, but I'll only hold the edge. What will happen with the scanner is it will take two at a time that you've taken together. And if you have thought about this in advance and composed, what you end up with is you end up with diptychs, physical diptychs, and also when they're scanned on full frame mask. Diptych is two images that complement or work together to reveal something more about the subject. They can be conceptual, and also be slightly more, I don't know, pragmatic or practical about it, and use it to create a portrait in two images. The preferred one is a close-up and further away of something. It could be a portrait, it could be an object. I've seen beautiful ones of like landmarks where someone's gone the classic tourist snap from far away and then gone up and taken a fine detail of something interesting. You have this beautiful diptych that is very different from anything else that anyone's taken before. So your artistic options are sort of awakened a little bit as well by this. Again, you don't have to do that, but there is something about that physicality of it being on. There we go, I can see there, there's one of my daughter. There's something about it physically being there on the negative and then captured in one single scan. There we go, and then the final thing I want to say is we often get questions about 110 versus half frame. Generally from people who are getting into it, who are looking to, they've shot 35mm, maybe 120, they just want to try out something else. They're often taken in by the fact that 110 cameras are pretty dinky, half frame cameras are pretty light as well. But there is a big difference when you look at the negative. So we've shown you half frame, you can see that. This is 110, so next to each other. You can see that the 110 is still significantly smaller than the half frame. So that's not necessarily a negative against 110. I also love shooting 110, mostly for the cameras, it must be said. They are really fun and often very forgiving on a day out. 110 is brilliant, but it doesn't give you the same image size, negative size as half frame. If you're looking to shoot half frame and then print them, you can scan and print up to A4 without any concerns at all. If you're going higher than that, you might want to make sure you have a good emulsion, because something that is grainy, you'll start to see the grain expanded as the print goes up, larger and larger beyond that. But unless you're exhibiting in a gallery, I mean, A4 is bigger than you need for digital portfolios or social media. You know, 6x4 or sort of photo frame book, they will still look absolutely beautiful. You will not be limited by the half frame aspect when you're printing at that size. So there we go, half frame in an absolute nutshell. I hope this has piqued your interest, perhaps, if you haven't shot it before, cleared up some questions. If you have shot it before, again, please share your experience. If you equally find that the orientation of the camera changes the way you see the world, then please let me know. Or if you think that I'm the only one in the world like that, tell me that as well, I'm absolutely fine. And then of course the big news of Pentax releasing a film camera that is half frame. While I film this, that news is still out there. We don't have a date yet, but I'm hoping that while this video will survive over the coming months and years, you will be able to write as well and share all the amazing photos you've had with it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.